For those of you who somehow don't know what Goosebumps is, it was basically just the Twilight Zone for kids, and depending on who you ask, probably anybody under the age of 30, they'd probably tell you that Goosebumps was actually better than Twilight Zone, which, yes. But I don't think I really need to explain it because I'm pretty sure everybody knows what Goosebumps is. And it's a book series and TV show that holds many episodes, but above all is the holy trilogy, Night of the Living Dummy. And we actually start off the trilogy with Night of the Living Dummy 2. Why is the first episode 2? Nobody knows. Right off the bat, the most notable thing is the acting is horrible, and the main character chick that I have no idea what her name is, already has a dummy named Dennis. Shouts out to Dennis. But since she's a greedy white girl, she wants a new doll, so the dad gets her Slappy.
Great! Slappy? Daddy, thank you!
Another thing to note here is that this is the whitest family I've ever seen.
If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
So what actually happens? Well, Slappy decides to do a bunch of shenanigans and the little girl gets blamed for it. And probably the funniest thing to happen in this one is when Slappy tugs on some black girl's finger.
Hey! You won't let me go! Cut it out! Stop it! Let her go! Let me go! Help me! Let me go right now! Help me!
And obviously, since this is for kids, Slappy can actually kill the parents, but when he decides to do something about it, he's gonna bash them with a guitar. So the girl's most logical idea is to yeet Slappy into the sewer, which obviously didn't work. Slappy just came back and he threatened to enslave all the kids. But in the end, all it really took to defeat him was one spear.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
From who? Plot twist, Dennis the Dummy, who also is apparently alive and just happens to sound like Goofy.
It's good to be back in the family again.
Next up, we have Bride of the Living Dummy. This episode starts off with Slappy. Despite being killed in the last episode, he's obviously still alive. He's found in a random alley during a thunderstorm from some random bomb. So Slappy decides to make an offer to him, involving them becoming partners. And during one of their shows, we see that during their act, Slappy sees a girl and her doll in the audience. So already he sees his bride in about 3 minutes of this episode, so we're shooting pretty quickly here. And in this one the acting still isn't good, but it is a lot better than the first one. So Slappy decides he's done with Jimmy, I guess that's the bum's name. So he forces him to ship him off to the new family so he can be with the girl doll named Mary Ellen. And many times in this episode, the little girl talks to her doll, kind of insinuating that Mary speaks. And early on, Slappy makes it very clear that he wants his bride.
I want my bride.
So the older sister, Jillian, tries to give Slappy back to Jimmy, but then gets bamboozled. Slappy then locks the fat kid in the bathroom so he can have some alone time with the girl and Mary Ellen. Which then gets us to the scene where Mary Ellen finally speaks, and it's funny.
I've had just about enough of this dumb doll.
Who are you calling dumb?
I told you! She's alive too!
Are you the smarty pants? Tell her, Katie. Tell your big sister the truth.
Then, plot twist, Slappy doesn't actually want Mary Ellen the doll, he wants the little girl. So Mary Ellen gets kind of offended, which leads to a slow-mo doll fight, ending with them falling into a buzzsaw. But since Slappy's soul can't actually die, we end the episode with one of the greatest reveals of all time. That the fat kid got possessed by Slappy at one point, using some of the greatest practical effects money can buy.
Sorry, folks. Harrison doesn't live here anymore.
And now we move on to Night of the Living Dummy 3, which is actually a two-parter episode. So where the first two were about 20 minutes, this one is 45 minutes. And this was definitely the one that I grew up with way more. I don't really remember the first two episodes, but for this one I watched it pretty much every October growing up. And in this one, we're actually greeted by a puppet version of R.L. Stine, the creator, which was something different. Now in this one, the family has a dad who collects a bunch of puppets, and now he just randomly found Slappy with no explanation of how or when, but he has him now. But the main plot point here is that their cousin Zane is coming over, and oh my god, it's Anakin.
Not again. Obi-Wan's gonna kill me.
My favorite character here, Zane's main traits here are that he's very timid, easily spooked, and a new photographer. So Slappy decides to pull a fuck ton of pranks on Zane so the kids could get punished for it, including Slappy taking a bunch of pictures of the dummies so Zane could get mad at the cousins.
So we're both guilty until proven innocent? Isn't this a democracy?
Democracy!
And then at one point, Slappy kicks Zane right in front of everybody, and yet nobody noticed. Then the dinner got ruined somehow, so the kids get grounded. Then we end part 1 of this 2-part episode with the plot twist that Zane was actually the one pranking himself, just to frame his cousins.
After this trip, Trina and Daniel will never mess with me again.
Now in this one, Slappy has a very noticeably different design, because they clearly just put a mask on some kid when he moves around, instead of using the actual puppet. Now to start off part 2, Zane is now this time punished, which then actually leads the kids to bond a little. So the parents decide to have a date night, leaving the kids home alone. And when Slappy eventually attacks the kids, it's funny to see him switch back and forth from the actual puppet to a kid in a mask. But since it's 3-on-1, they pretty much just trap Slappy in a suitcase and throw him down the well. But of course that didn't last, and when he came back, he turned Zane into a dummy himself, and now he wants to enslave the kids. The kids go on looking for the card, knowing that maybe if they read it out loud again, it will kill Slappy. But when they read it, it did not work at all. But then when Slappy calls the other dummy, Rocky, his slave, Rocky didn't really take that too kindly.
Falcon punch!
So he turned on him, leading to another puppet fight, where Rocky then yeets Slappy out the window, but he didn't hit the ground because he held on to the roof. But in that moment, the roof is then struck by fucking lightning, blowing his ass up, putting everything back to normal.
Don't you get it? I'm invincible!
But of course, every episode has to have an end with a twist, so we get this magical final scene.
I'll be seeing you real soon, cousins.
So that was Night of the Living Dummy, the trilogy, which I think is obviously a contender for one of the best trilogies of all time, especially if you're in the Halloween season and looking for a quick laugh. Alright, I'm done.